So those are going to take rollovers for anything you want, no problem. Hello, and welcome back to Vermont Scale Customs. How's everybody doing? So this is going to be a quick how-to on how to make your own Radome-like antenna for your ARB bull bar type bumpers. Mine on my LC70 kind of specifically has tabs on the back, which I discovered yesterday that you can thread an M1.4 in. Once I figured that out, I've had some parts laying around that I've been kind of looking at to make one of those antennas, or get as close to basically as a rendition as possible. This actually happens to be a small pointed, what one might consider a wood screw, but if you don't have any M1.4 like this, you might be able to find something like this, which has a Phillips head to be able to catch a small enough washer, something along those lines to be able to keep that spring locked down. So let's get into it, and I'll use my screwdriver as kind of a pointing tool. What kind of material we got here? We've got 1/8 solid rod polystyrene from Evergreen Scale Models. You can use this stuff and you can paint it black if you like. This is just a rod stock. You can trim that to whatever size you want. If you have an issue with it not fitting your springs correctly, what you can do is use some of your heat shrink tubing, cut small sections of it, shrink that down. If you're worried about holding, you could probably throw a drop of glue on there and then heat shrink that at the same time, and then trim off whatever you need, for your desired antenna height. Moving on, I've got some stainless steel. So if you're looking for a little bit more movement on that, you kind of want a little bit more motion, like for video or what have you, you can cut your desired length. And the same thing, since you might not be, the right size for your desired spring. So I'll show you here, you might have a little bit of a size problem here, but what you could do is kind of stack that up with some heat shrink tubing, make sure that that's molded on there, and then kind of wrap it all together with an outer layer, and then shrink that all down too if you wanted. Still a couple of options to do there. So the material I used on the ones, and the one that I'm going to show you, is from something like a parts tree here. You'll see that this material right here is about the size that I want to use for this particular spring. In fact, that's what I used the last time. So what I need to do is just trim these off. And another reason why I like this is because it had this one little change in size here, which I wanted to have at the top. So I trimmed right about in here, and then I'll make sure I take this all the way down to about here and show you how to clean this all up with your hobby knife and stuff like that. If you didn't want one quite so big, you wanted to step it down a little bit more, you have some material on the other side here to be able to use, and you can trim this to whatever length you want, and utilize heat shrink to be able to stack that up to be able to get your desired size for your spring. So let's set this down for a sec and go ahead and just trim this material. And like I said, I want this just slightly above, just so I've got that tiny little bit of lip that sort of steps down. That just kind of added detail just almost makes it look like it's got a, just a little bit more of a radio type top. Obviously these things need to go away. I do recommend putting your finger over things so you don't shoot them across the room and end up stepping on them a few minutes later or at night, whatever, in your bare feet. Okay, so obviously you see there's a tiny little bit of material left here. Hobby knife time. And you can just take this stuff, it's super soft, just kind of whittle some of that away, and you can be as clean and as concise as you want, but for the sake of making this go fast on camera, now as you can see from the injection molding, clean my mess up here, and I'll use my knife to point at it. As you can see, there's a tiny little kind of defect in this plastic, so you could either trim that off, or you could try and kind of hide that if you wanted by placing some heat shrink over the top of this. This might even be a little bit too tight to try and get that down on there, so let's see if one of these extra larger sizes fits. Probably not that one. I bet we could probably get something like that wrapped over the top of that if you wanted, if that was something that was important to you. So let me show you kind of how to get to the next stage. Now, I don't need to have two antennas that are the same height. I can have, you know, maybe two different height antennas on the vehicle. So if I was concerned and this was all the heat shrink tubing that I had, and I wanted to make sure my numbers, you see we have K102, there's a whole series of number here, as well as another CRUS, which down here. But if you wanted to trim this small bit off the top, it's actually kind of something I would recommend if you're really super concerned about that being proper. But as a little, just kind of like a quick show, let's flash this real fast. If you're fast, you will not have to worry about causing any carbon burning on your heat shrink. So now, as you can see, I ended up with the lettering on there. Now that's still a little long. If I didn't want that, what I can do is kind of shorten this up a little bit. But to just give you an example here really quick of getting this into the spring, if you need to, you may need to trim a little bit off the ends to sort of get that pointed a little bit more so it doesn't hang up. And once you can get that started in there, you'll basically see what I'm going at as an end product. Okay. Now, put two and two together. What you want to do is you put this down in the inside of this and you assemble this basically in sequence, which is what I'm about to show you. This is basically how the antenna is going to want to go together. This is how it's going to attach to the bumper itself going through this. It catches about 1 or 2 wraps of coil. If you don't have any material that grabs enough coil, or if you look at the ends of these, they're actually 2 slightly different diameters, so you'd probably have an issue with this one pulling through this darker coil here, which is a nice softer coil if you want a little bit more motion out of it. It's a slightly softer material than this silver one. But anyway, what you would do is you would want to put a washer through. This is basically what you're looking at wanting to have by the time you're ready to put this to use. Okay, so let's double check here. Now, if you wanted to use this spring, I've got my wire cutters right here. Kind of push the nose of that in a little bit. Make sure you grab both sides or you will be looking for those for a while. And then you should have basically 2 very similar size half coils. And if you didn't like this one and you wanted to use one of the darker springs and you were having problems with fitment, okay, this is what I was talking about. You basically just take this thing and go right through. Now you're going to grab a couple of wraps of coil with that washer that's on there, as you can see. So let's cut to the next part where I mount the coil onto the bumper, and then I'll show you how to insert this, and then we'll put the last piece of heat shrink on there and we'll get that all finished up for you. Okay, part 2 is the assembly. So I guess I kind of forgot to have mention, I think I said something about this being M1.4 earlier, and if you're familiar with what you're looking at, this is the ball end of an SCX24 shock, one of their stock shocks that they come with. It looks quite like a trailer ball hitch. But anyway, I figured out that these basically happen to be, well, they're powder coated, so there's a little bit of kind of room for threading in without destroying the threads or anything like that. And if you do happen to need to, you can get M1.4 nuts and just put them on the back side of this once it's threaded through. But what I've already done, and I will try to get this lined up so you can see, I've already placed the washer on the inside of the coil spring here, and then I will go ahead and push this through And then very gently try and reach over here to see if I can't get that threaded in for you on camera without knocking anything over. So basically what you need to do is just build this kind of piece by piece and step by step as you go here. See how tight that is, and kind of double check to see if you want it any tighter at all. If you notice any like deforming of the coil springs or anything like that, and that's not a desired look that you want, and just go ahead and stop. But as you can see now, you've got your coils attached, very securely attached as well. Like I said, this particular one that I have cut is a little bit longer than the one on the other side, and that does not bother me. We've got two different ranges of antenna now that we're going to be working with. So you can see that's as easy as just sliding that in just like so. All right, now let me zoom out. Okay, as you can see, you got a little bit taller one here. This has got a little bit more movement because it's got a little bit more weight at the top. The short one here, which has been heat shrunk already, can't really see the wraps of the coils, but they're there. You can definitely flick it. That's going to take running over some things. It might even take a few rollovers with no problem. And if you do break it, I mean, you're looking at, what was that, 20 seconds to pop that thing on there. You just hope that you don't damage your thread or anything like that in that little tab that's there. And if you're concerned about that coming out of the backside, obviously, like I just said a few minutes ago, M1.4 nuts. So let's take a quick peek at some heat shrink here. Kind of about in there. I was looking at this a second ago, and I kind of like the letters, the VW, and I think there was something on this side. So there's like a 0 and a 5 and an aught, like a small symbol that's been inside parentheses anywhere. So I think I want about that. I slide that down over, and you can let that sit wherever you want on there, and then you can also pay attention to wherever your other writing is at. So if you want to spin that around so you can see where the writing is, and then do your best to try and line up the other writing. But I'm just going to show you how to quickly flash this. You're not going to damage the body. You're not going to do anything at all. In fact, let's zoom in real quick. All right, here we go. You see it conforming to the coils. I'll quickly hit this side over here. Oops, probably don't want to hold it upside down. But as you can see, that obviously adheres to the coils there, kind of wraps itself right around. Kind of give that a second to sort of cool, but it's going to stiffen things up a little bit. But this is a little bit more realistic. This is probably a little bit more closer to what it would actually be. So like I've said here, I've got probably what you would want to call two different range antennas. One's a little bit taller, this one's slightly shorter, this one's a little bit taller. I don't mind that they're two different heights. I think it looks pretty good. I wish I could actually zoom out a little bit more. Let me get a different angle. Okay, back at it again. So I was doing some adjusting after I turned the camera off the last time, and kind of discovered that I wasn't really pleased with how this was attached on here. And I realized that I wanted to, I think, go ahead and back this with a nut on the underside. So why don't I do that right now? Tough location, but it can be done. Confident. Okay, now that that's on, that's not going anywhere. Now I want to make sure that my lettering is lined up to the front. So I've got that faced out, right? And I go ahead and just slip that back in. That seems to be holding just fine. Now if I wanted to leave that like that, I could. The antenna might pop out or whatever, and it's just going to be able to be slipped back in there if you happen to catch where it was lost or whatever. But if you want that to kind of have that sort of I don't know, ultra cool look, I guess, make sure your lettering is facing the same way. I'm not sure if you can really make that on camera, but all right, so now that that's slipped down over that, watch how quickly this actually sets up and kind of reveals the coils underneath. It's pretty cool. and there's no risk of, you'd have to really sit here for a couple minutes and run some heat on this in order to get any impact on your body. So make sure that you're fast, you move quickly, and you won't have any carbon staining or anything like that. Now, as you can see, that of course, you know, molded to all of the coils, and you still maintain a bunch of flexibility between the both of them. So those are going to take rollovers or anything you want, no problem. Blah blah blah. So there you go. That's how you hook up Radome like antennas. I hope I don't get copyright bit on that. But these are basically two-way antennas built for like the outback and so on and so forth. You see these on a lot of Australian-based trucks, and they're just for long-range communication where you need it. And so, like I said, you got short range and long range here. That's what I'm going with. Somebody can correct me in the comments if that's totally wrong. I want to kind of make this a little bit more accurate than not. But at any rate, I think I've seen some out there that have two different length antennas on them. And it's a bit much, you know. I can even just back it down to just having the one on here, or just make it this one, whichever I end up choosing. The world is your oyster in the world of RC cars, so do what you like to do. Anyway, I've got another video coming up on this thing about a bunch of stuff that I've been doing to it. And we'll see you when that video comes out. Thanks for watching. I hope you picked up a couple things, a couple ideas. Maybe you'll take some of those ideas and do some stuff yourself and make some of your own antennas. At any rate, we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Hit that like and subscribe.